Good morning, distinguished entrepreneurs and employedpreneurs, both new and the experienced ones. We thank you all for taking the time out to join us this morning. We know every one of us is quite busy, especially as we draw close to the end of the year. And so we do not take your giving us this time for granted in any way. This webinar, which is the 10th in our stakeholder series, is promising to be a very interesting one. My name is Kilian Kanoba, and I'm a partner here at Pedabo. I'm with the tax and advisory practice. This webinar has been designed to help businesses and entrepreneurs, especially in the SME sector, to appreciate the impact a well-planned and executed collaboration with other businesses of common ideals could have on their performance and overall growth. We have in our midst seasoned entrepreneurs and consultants, and we are especially thankful to have our panelists who graciously accepted our invitation to participate. Our panelists this morning include our good friend, Otumba Akimbo Akinolubade, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Kawai Technologies. Joining Otumba Akimbo, Mr. Arosa Osenwege, the managing partner at Adium Consulting, as well as Mr. Ezu Uwauma, founder and CEO of Xavier Group. All three panelists who have been carefully selected, I assure you, will be driving the discussion on our topic, growing and scaling your business through collaboration, from their vast industry as well as professional services, knowledge, and experience across multiple sectors. To officially commence the program, our very own Tina Adediran, who leads the management consulting practice here at Pedabo, will lay the foundation for the panel discussion by introducing the concept of collaboration as a successful growth strategy. She will be reviewing how to identify opportunities, the criteria for assessing and deciding on a go or no go. Her presentation will also explore some of the inherent fears of collaboration and their mitigation. Tina will also be highlighting some successful collaboration scenarios, both local and international. Following this presentation, we will transition into the interactive panel session, in which our panelists will explore their experiences, impact, and perhaps pitfalls with collaboration as a strategy for growth. And what better time to do this than at the end of a financial year, when entrepreneurs should actively be measuring the impact of their strategy this year and planning for the new business year 2023. The panel session will be moderated by one of our female partners here, Onyechi Oyoka, who will steer the discussion on the practical applications and impact of this strategy. We expect the panel session to be very impactful and engaging indeed. And we look forward to taking questions from our participants and having a stimulating conversation. For those of you not familiar with our firm, I will take a minute to introduce us. Pedabo is one of the leading professional services firms in the country. Our core services are in the areas of tax, audit, and advisory. Over the past 2 decades of our practice, we have consistently and progressively worked to achieve our vision of excellent service and timely solutions delivery to meet the bespoke needs of our clients through teamwork and the competencies of a professional and dependable team. To our clients, I say thank you for continuing to work with us. And to our guests this morning, I welcome you to a preview of our capacity. I wish you all an enlightening session. Once again, thank you for joining us and enjoy the webinar. Thank you. So I will hand over to Tina to immediately proceed with the lead presentation of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, especially to our panelists and, of course, to our guests for joining us. So I'm just going to get right into it so that without further ado, so that we can round this up very quickly. If we have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the Q&A box or to put your questions in the chat. As we go along, someone will address those questions during the presentation as well as during the panelist session. But if you have specific questions that you want us to take, we can also take those at the Q&A by the time we get to the Q&A session of the agenda. Okay, so again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and we will go through this as quickly as possible because obviously we took some time from our busy schedules. So we're talking about growing and scaling your business through collaboration. Like Mr. Killian said, this is a very good time. It's the end of the year. People are assessing what it is that they have done in this financial year and how successful those things have been, as well as, of course, designing and making adjustments for the new strategy for 2023. So we will just dive right in. Some of the things, we'll just generally touch on the introduction of, what business growth means to us, what's the concept of collaboration, collaboration and communication tools, because, of course, these are things that you would require to be able to carry out a successful collaboration exercise. We'll touch on some of the fears of collaboration, especially as they pertain to our environment, and some of the ways that we can address those fears, identification of collaboration opportunities, what a collaboration agreement should typically contain, as well as look at some of those local and international case studies. The learning outcome from this webinar, for us, is really to help you understand the concept of business collaboration for growth, to help demystify some of those fears, to identify those best collaboration opportunities. Of course, that will be different for every business, but there are certain general criteria that cut across every sector that you must consider. Assess and choose the right partners to collaborate with. Of course, that's very important. Highlight focus areas to be considered in every collaboration endeavor. What are those key things that you need to look at? We hope that by the end of this session, you would be able to identify some of them. What are the must-have documentations to avoid any pitfalls from a collaboration exercise? Because, of course, it takes time. So you don't want to put that time into pursuing a collaboration endeavor and then it fails. So some of those key things that you should look at and the documentation that should be prepared. Understanding the benefits through real-life scenarios, and of course, assisting you to position your business for a successful 2023 strategy. Should this be one of the things that you would consider into the new year? So, diving right into it, business growth. We all know what that is. We're all business owners, entrepreneurs, or employpreneurs. Everybody in Nigeria these days has a side hustle of some sort. So everybody has some business, whether or not you're selling, whether it's consulting or you're selling a particular product. So we all know what business growth means. Really, it's what happens when you get profitable, when your employees, the owners, when all the external factors all work together to influence the success of your business. It's also where the business reaches a point for expansion and seeks additional options to generate more profit. As we know, once you get to that, you start to plateau. But the point is, at least you must get to that point where you're seeking additional options to generate more profit because you have expanded your capacity, you have expended your capacity at that particular point. That's when you grow. Also, it's tangible success that any successful business, any business can measure, any business owner can measure. That shows you that you're making growth. Well, that shows you that you're growing depending on where you started out from. These can be internal, they can be external, but the point is the focal center is, is where they meet, where you have internal growth versus external growth. That center is really the section that measures the fact that you have grown. What are some of the growth levers that we look at as businesses? Collaboration, of course, is one of them. Collaboration can be internal and can be external, but pretty much what it means is joining some other business endeavor. Maybe for a product, it might be for a product launch, or it might be for a merger, it might be an acquisition. Okay, well, maybe not an acquisition per se, but yes, it can be for a merger, it can be a strategic alliance, whatever it is that brings two organizations or two people who are delving into different projects together to set something up. That is collaboration, and it's obviously a growth lever. Collaboration assists you to get to a particular vision faster than if you were doing it by yourself. Mostly that's the impact that collaboration should have. And you should also consider that even when you're considering collaborating with other parties. Cost optimization is also a growth lever. If you can manage your costs, obviously your profits would increase. Retaining the organic measure, you might just decide, okay, you know what, let's take it slow. Let's evolve as a business. But knowing where to make certain changes, also assures you of how quickly that organic growth can happen. But that's also a growth lever that you can look out for. Market disruptions. You might have a new product, a new service, and you might just be able to disrupt the market from what people know it to be and make changes. That is also a growth lever. Utilization of distribution channels. So how far and how wide can you get your business out there? That helps you grow. Product improvements, conducting market research. These are things that businesses will typically do in any given year to ascertain where it is they are and reposition themselves for some level of business growth or the other. So collaboration, we get right into it. I've defined it already, and I have mentioned the fact that we have internal and external collaboration. Internal, of course, just meaning that your business is beginning to, your teams beginning to work together a bit more effectively, sharing ideas and skills within the team for a common goal. But externally, it would be that work practice where organizations again come together with a common purpose. So there needs to be a shared value. And of course, you have to have identified what that benefit that you're hoping to get is. But there needs to be a shared value that allows you to attain that type of external collaboration. It can be creative, it can be connective, and it can be compounding. Creative is where two or more people, of course, develop something for it to achieve a specific goal. Connecting is when you're bringing together information from disparate sources. And then compounding, where a team builds on previous achievements to reach further goals. So collaboration is not a one-off activity, even if it's external. Following an initial collaboration endeavor, you can also still build on that to achieve further results or further impact. Theories that guide internal collaboration. There's a theory rooted in the work of a gentleman called Lev Vygotsky. Generally, what it's doing is it's just highlighting the importance of communication. It's highlighting the importance of interaction within teams, and this happens whether it's in learning or whether it's in business. Collaborative leadership theory, on the other hand, is just about you understanding the distinction between cooperation and collaboration, because there's a bit of a difference in how that thought process works. So not in the activity itself, but in how the thought process behind the activity works. So with collaborative leadership theory, we'll typically utilize informal and formal collaborative learning groups. We will apply the principle of problem-based learning at different points in time. Collaborative leadership theory is business practice that brings teams out of silos. So again, the point is, in our different organizations, we can have different teams who are working independently, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at some points, to achieve collaborative impact, we need to bring them out of those silos for there to be a holistic view of how the organization works so that it can grow. And so, of course, they can share skills and competencies organically. Some of the outcomes of those theories really is the theory of shared understanding. What does that mean? If you're trying to collaborate with someone, you both need to understand what it is that you desire to get out of that collaboration. So it involves establishing group dynamics where the collaborators engage, they continue to interact to help them build a better understanding of what it is they're trying to achieve by that collaboration. Obviously, there will be a collaboration agreement, but these are, the principle behind it is that we have a shared understanding of what we are all trying to achieve. The three strands that it functions by really are adequate communication, pooling of information and resources from all the available sources. So from both collaborating parties, let's say, for example, company A and company B, how do you pool your resources together? How do you pool your information together? It's also based on the function of negotiation of roles and responsibilities. So if I'm giving you 3 resources for this collaboration endeavor and company B is giving 4 resources, what are the roles and responsibilities of all 7 resources? We all need to be accountable for our part in the collaboration. Then the theory of collective contribution, what does that say? That equally has 3 strands that it functions by, which is pretty much avid participation. Every party and every team member that is brought to that party needs to participate. Recognizing the contributions of all parties. So yes, you're participating, but we need to recognize that you're participating and you're participating adequately. Then the full engagement of all parties pertaining to their disparate roles and responsibilities. It's very key that we each know what our role and responsibility in a collaboration endeavor is so that we can bring to the table the right skills and competencies. There's no need having multiple skills in a particular area and lacking a skill in another. So we must know and we must contribute collectively based on those skills, which of course will be outlined in the agreement anyway, but we must be clear about these from the beginning. Then the theory of regulation. Obviously, as we know, regulation is what now guides how we do what we do. So contributions must be constructive. How do we resolve differences? Because like with every group endeavor, conflict will arise. How do we resolve those differences and not come out there with sentimentalism, trying to get the better of the other party? Yes, at the end of the day, everybody's focused on their benefits, but we must work collectively together for a new common goal. And that new common goal doesn't necessarily mean it's not aligned with your company's vision. But the point is that we must maintain that shared understanding and we require the theory of regulation to ensure that we're doing just that. So what are the dimensions of this business collaboration? I mean, we talked around them, but it's governance. Those are the important things: administration, autonomy, mutuality, trust, and reciprocity. What is the governance dimension? How do we guide the principles that we are working by? How do we guide the joint decision making? What are the rules that govern our behavior, that govern our relationship, that govern how we interact and how we respond to different things? Administration dimension. This addresses the need for structure. Who decides, how the collaborating business is then going to run, and how do we put governance in action? Autonomy dimension. So we already have company A and company B coming together. We can't then have, by coming together, it might be for a project. It might not necessarily be that they are merging into a single entity. It might be, for a particular need. But then there can also be collaboration where they do intend to merge into a single entity. So for autonomy, you can't have company A and company B, and then you have maybe the sister company of company A trying to also, play a part and make an input into that collaboration. So it needs to be free of any external influence or control that is outside of those 2 collaborative parties directly. Mutuality. So agreed discussions, arrangement of terms. What's the transaction? What's the agreement? We need to be clear about what those agreed discussions are. Like we said, everybody's going to be pushing their own agenda, but the point is at the end of the day, both parties have to mutually agree on the decisions that are made. Then trust, reciprocity. Every agreement has a spirit. It has the expectation is that it's done in good faith. So as much as you're trying to get the best out of an agreement, you are equally basing it on some level of trust. So every business transaction, no matter how you look at it, it still functions on the basis of trust. So we have mutually agreed we want this, this, and this. We need to be able to trust each other to deliver on it. That doesn't mean that our agreements should not be clear. They should be clear. They should, as much as possible, assess every point within that collaboration endeavor. But at the end of the day, they still have to be done in good faith and on the basis of some level of trust that we're going to do our best our best to ensure that this collaboration proves through. So you're not dragging someone along, you're doing it with the actual intent of seeing it through. What are some of these benefits of business collaboration? I'm sure we can think of very many, but it compensates for in-house weaknesses. Like I said earlier, you can achieve with collaboration a growth level in 2 years that perhaps you cannot achieve on your own in 10 years. It depends on you having assessed the collaboration need and gone through the process to ensure that indeed the collaboration that you are pursuing and the party you are pursuing with is the right party. But the point of collaboration, the ultimate point of collaboration, is to get you to where you need to go faster. So it means that there are certain competencies or certain weaknesses that you don't have in-house. It might be technological, it might be skill, it might be resources, it might be financial and non-financial resources. So whatever it is, the point is that you're getting into this collaboration as a means of compensating for your lack of something. It might be a new market, it might be a new product. The collaborating party might be someone who offers a product that complements yours. So it might be a complementer, not necessarily a competitor, or it might even be a competitor that has a market share in a market that you very well want to get into, but you're not there yet. I mean, that at the end of the day, the point is that you're building credibility and you're boosting your productivity by getting into this collaboration. It opens new channels of communication. So you might not be in a particular country, you might not be in a new market, you might want access to a person's client base. There are different reasons, but these are some of those benefits. Access to new products, to new markets, expanding customer reach for the business, allowing business owners to tap into combined knowledge, capabilities, skills, thereby promoting learning and skill sharing. Aids the sharing of resources, equipment, facilities, and raw materials. So at the end of the day, you're simply compensating for something that you don't have. That's the only reason you consider a collaboration in the first place. So again, it can be access to a new market, it can be access to a new product, it can be access to a particular technology, it can be resources in terms of equipment, resources in terms of finances, it might be a know-how, so skills that you don't have, and then you're trying to tap into it. So of course, it also expands your business portfolio because you're increasing your market base, you're increasing your client base. So that is the expectation, of course, is that includes expands your business portfolio, and at the end of the day, ultimately, it leads to an increase in revenue. So your revenue would increase before you can carry out things like cost optimization for your profits to equally skyrocket. But the point is that there are several benefits that could arise from business collaboration. So some of the strategies that ensure business growth. So collaborate, we've been talking a lot about collaboration, but like I mentioned earlier, there are different kinds of collaboration. So it can be a formation of business partnerships or strategic alliances. It can be acquisitions, it can be takeovers, it can be franchising. Franchising is a type of collaboration because with franchising, you immediately jump into a person's, you're immediately laden with reputational, a brand strength that perhaps you didn't have. So you come into the market, you already have this brand strength. This brand also gives you processes, gives you systems, tells you pretty much how to run the business. And all it cost you was money. That's very important. But the point is, what it would have taken you, 5 years to build a system where you will learn how to do certain things. By 2 weeks training, you can get everybody. You can get everybody's ball rolling almost immediately with an example like franchising. Creation of ecosystems and innovation networks. How do you work together within an ecosystem? So it might not necessarily be that you merge as into one entity like we had said, but there can be an ecosystem from which you can get the different competencies that you're lacking, such that they compensate for that lack thereof. So that in itself is a collaboration strategy. Then of course, joint ventures. People enter joint ventures for single projects, or people enter joint ventures for long-term or short-term projects. But the point is, again, we're getting into this to achieve a desired goal. So I'm a developer. I don't want to go around buying land. I want to work with landowners and enter into a JV and then we agree on what the sharing ratio is, we agree on what the sale is, we agree on who's constructing. That is a collaborative strategy. That you might not be able to, you can get that and start that today versus having to try to save money up to buy the land. So again, collaboration is meant to save you time. To a large extent, it's meant to save you resources. Yes, you're still putting something into the collaboration, but in the long run, what you're putting in is less than you would have put in if you were trying to grow organically to get to that, to get to that point. So I talked about these, but I mean, it's just some comments on the collaborative strategies which we mentioned. Of course, we know that, with business partnerships, it's an agreement, you come together, it's a strategic alliance, we're either turning into one entity or we're working with you based on certain things. So it could be temporary, it could be permanent, but again, for tactical goals, it ensures continuous innovation and strengthens the business portfolio. For acquisitions and takeovers, again, it depends on what it is you're trying to achieve. If someone has a client base but doesn't have the required skills to deliver on that client base, you might decide that all you want to do is buy the person off rather than invest in trying to build something together. So that's the losing of ownership. I'm willing to sell off. I've made whatever I need to make out of it, and then you can completely take it over. Ecosystems, like we said, the goals are related to the product, services, processes, or business models. So how do we work together to achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve without necessarily forming one entity? Joint ventures, like we said, it's a combination of two or more parties, seek the development of a single enterprise or forming a consortium for a project. So like the example that I gave, so it's acquired for profit, it's acquired for, I mean, there's always a sharing ratio for something in a joint venture. So, and we each have our responsibilities, we each have our goals that we must deliver into that joint venture. And franchising, I've already given an example. Obviously, there's an initial upfront fee that needs to be paid, but you can hit the ground running almost immediately. Because the franchisor has already built a system that works, that has been tested and has been trusted over time. So let's get into collaboration and communication tools. We won't dwell on this. We all run businesses or we all work in businesses, but just to highlight some of them, I mean, generally, what are they? They're just tools that allow teams to work together, to share ideas, to provide feedback, inputs, information. So, whether it's about a project, whether it's about a work item, whether it's about the task, whether it's about a full collaboration strategy. The point is there are tools that you can use to make those things easier. And of course, technology drives those tools. So whether it's Jira, whether it's Trello, whatever it is you're using as your project, I mean, even Teams, even Zoom, those can be collaboration tools. For cloud, there's the cloud storage, there's the digital asset management systems, online shared calendars, just things that make your work easier, whether it's in communicating or in driving actual collaboration. And of course, the communication tools, we're all familiar with them: instant messaging, email, video conferencing, and the likes. The point is we are able to communicate quicker and faster. We're able to share information in real time, and we're not, sitting and waiting for someone to, to come and tell us, about something. So to harness those, how do we harness those tools? Again, we wouldn't dwell on this, but of course they increase our productivity, they save us time, so we're more efficient, we're more effective. They help us capture insights that can be very useful in business analysis and in driving certain changes that may be required for collaboration or even just for the growth of the business. Eliminate outdated systems. So once you see that there's obviously something new, a lot of us cannot remember the days that we used to push papers. Of course, some organizations still do, but now it's a completely different ball game as to how we communicate, how we deal, how we work. Scheduling and attending meetings or training sessions anywhere in the world. Everybody on this call now, we don't all have to be in Nigeria, but we're able to do this. Even we who are in Nigeria, we don't have to get on the road and get into traffic, but we're able to do this because of these tools that have evolved over time. And of course, even in the management of projects, there are several platforms. Like I said, of course, there's Project, but there's Jira, there's Trello. There's so many of them that we we can work with to achieve our desired impact. Then, of course, we create together and then we share knowledge. Fears of collaboration and how to address them. So we can look into this a bit. What are some of those typical fears, especially in the Nigerian context? I mean, we've evolved a lot, but one of the key areas that there were lots of concerns back in the day was the fear of losing control, the loss of autonomy. Businesses had a lot of concerns about, oh, you know, I'm going to lose control of my business. So you know, they didn't like to partner. They didn't like to partner with other organizations. Izu, you want to say something? I see your hand is up.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Apologies for that. Yes. So the fear of losing control, loss of autonomy, that used to be a very big concern for businesses back in the day. You know, they feel like, you know, I'm not going to be able to control my vision if I get external people to come into the team with me. But there's always the general comparison of being 100% owner of a business that makes 100 million versus being a 40% owner of a business that makes $1 billion. So at the end of the day, what you're afraid to lose, eventually in itself, it doesn't mean anything in comparison to what you can potentially gain from the right collaboration, with emphasis on the right collaboration. So it's not every collaboration you go into, even if it comes at you, you need to consider each of them in their own merit. So sometimes it might not even be loss of control from an equity perspective. It might be, oh, I have a particular vision and this person I want to collaborate with is not going in the same direction as me. That is why you need to spend some time making those assessments, spend some time looking at the different criteria before you choose to get in bed literally with someone, with somebody else. Right, but these were some of those fears back in the day. Complexity in decision making, of course, like with every scenario, the more people you have, the more difficult it's going to be, you know, to make certain decisions, especially if the roles and responsibilities had not been very clearly stated from the get-go. Damage to the organization and waste of resources. So, like we said, you have to set the ground rules. At the beginning of the collaboration endeavor, there needs to be timelines. You also don't want to get into a case where you spend 6 months to a year discussing the collaboration, sharing your information with another organization, and that at the end of the day you are unable to go, you know, to go through with it. These will happen, but obviously that's also why you need to have things like NDAs, non-compete agreements, non-disclosure agreements, because anybody you're discussing a collaboration with will have access to some of your information, because you have to share for them to be able to assess whether or not you're a right fit. So you need to be, you know, these also need to be considered. Competition between the collaborating partners. That's something that gets very critical because, again, because you have their information as to how they run their business successfully, you find situations where people, you know, wake up one day and say, oh, I can run this business myself anyways. Why do I need to continue to collaborate with this person? So your agreements need to be tight on how they protect you in that regard. Lack of consistency and clarity on roles and responsibilities. That is always a very it's always a very tricky place to be because you have to agree strictly on those roles and those responsibilities to ensure that you don't run into any challenges. How to deal with some of these fears. From the get-go, you have to list the potential benefits. You both have to be clear on what your objectives for that collaboration are. You both have to be clear on what your expected outcomes are. That way, you're able to definitely assign roles and responsibilities. You're definitely able to ascertain where it is you're trying to go and how it is that you're trying to get there. It's powerful to see these answers, to seek these answers out. So write them down, of course. I mean, one of the things that is also very essential sometimes is that you have an independent eye, or you have an independent pair of eyes. Because anytime you come to the table as two collaborating parties, the expectation is everybody saying, oh, you're getting more from me than I'm getting from you. But if we have listed out the potential benefits and you have an independent party who's able to douse those sentimentalities and keep it objective and logical on the things that both parties are expected to benefit from one another, because for a collaboration, both parties certainly have to be benefiting something, otherwise it's a waste of time. So then typically it's expected that there's that independent pair of eyes. So whether you're using a consultant and you're using a third party, there needs to be someone to be able to balance those expectations at each of those meetings. Identify your strengths and weaknesses. So it needs to be clear. This is the strength you're bringing to the table. This is the strength I'm bringing to the table, expected to deal with the weaknesses of the other. So we can each immediately begin to value